Good morning, friends. Thank you for joining me. It is turning out to be an absolutely beautiful morning here in New Mexico. And fortunately, we do have more rain in the forecast. In fact, we've gotten so much rain this past week that our Forest Service authorities are now saying we have permission to go back into the national forest. I guess it is what it is. But as you probably have already guessed by now, I'm going to be doing another series of tests with my homemade black powder. I have narrowed it down to two powders, the juniper and the barberry. But before I get to that test, I want to qualify something first. When I moved here to New Mexico 16 years ago, it was my desire to harvest black bear. And where I live here, we have a wonderful mountain range that has a high number of black bear. So I decided to look for a Lyman Great Plains rifle. This is 54 caliber, and going on Gunbroker, I happened to find two. Once again, I'm left-handed, so I was looking for specifically a left-handed Great Plains. And there was a seller that had two of these left-handed that they were selling right at cost. And I'm like, holy crap, how can anybody afford to do that? So what I did is I called the seller, which happens to be, let me get this articulated correctly. It happened to be a sports store, gun store, in the state of Pennsylvania. So I asked them point blank, how can you afford to sell this rifle at what is your cost? And the gal that I was speaking with said, well, they had hired a new gun buyer that was completely unaware of Pennsylvania hunting laws. And in the state of Pennsylvania, at that time, their hunting season, their muzzleloader hunting season was flintlock only. Well, this Great Plains is percussion, and it's also left-handed. So with that being stated, obviously the buyer purchased these two Great Plains and put them on their shelves in a store that they would never ever sell, especially to hunters, because at that time, like I said, it was flintlock only. So I ended up purchasing it. It's 54 caliber, and I'd never had an opportunity to take this out to bear hunt, just simply because in the state of New Mexico they have a quota, and depending on what the season is and the current bear population, I'm just going to throw out a couple numbers. If they're going to allow 5 males to be harvested and 2 females to be harvested, once that quota is reached, the entire season is shut down. But the catch to this is the state says if you get within 20% of that number, that unit is shut down. And unfortunately, where I live here, the archery season, which comes first, the archers typically shut the season down because they get within that 20% of that quota. So I've never had an opportunity to take this rifle on the bear hunt that I had purchased it for. So with that being stated, it's mostly sat up on my gun rack collecting dust until just a few years ago, back in 2018, I decided, you know what, I'm going to go take this to the Rendezvous and I'm going to compete with it. Now, where we compete, the whole context is if there's ever any ties, your tiebreaker becomes the target itself. So this is the tie-breaking target. Now in 2018, 30 yards offhand, you can see how well this gun shoots. Let me see if I can't get this a little bit more this way, and maybe you can see the holes through the paper with the sky as the backdrop. I don't know how well that's really being projected right now, but if you can see it, this is how well this firearm shoots. 30 yards offhand. Okay, and these are all shot with 70 grains of powder, because that's what I shoot in my Great Plains. Unless I hunt, then I bump it up to 10. In 2019, once again, 30 yards offhand. What was particularly interesting about this Rendezvous in 2019 is on our trail walk we have 21 steel targets, and in the 42 years up to this point that this Rendezvous has been into existence, I have been the only shooter to ever have gone 21 for 21 on the trail walk. And once again, you can see that target, the gun shoots extremely well. And then in 2021, I took first place in the trail walk once again, but obviously I pulled that one shot. And you can see that the two are, you know, right within a respectable group, other than the one flyer, and that I know was me. But I also have to admit something too. The first time I took this firearm to a rendezvous, like most of us, we all think, well, since it's 50 caliber or better, you better be shooting 2F, except for this gun. The first rendezvous I took it to, I brought 2F, and 9 times out of 10, I had to remove the nipple and put some powder in the snail, because the regular caps would not make the 2F go off. So after a frustrating week of having to do that, I talked to a friend of mine in Wisconsin that has a whole lot more knowledge than I do about such things. And he also had, or has, a Great Plains. And what he has told me, which I have since confirmed, that for whatever reason, there are some Great Plains that have to take 3F. This is one such gun. And he also recommends using Magnum caps. So I bought a bunch of Magnum caps, went to the next rendezvous with 3F, and I had 0 issues with it. So obviously some firearms are detrimental regarding that, if I'm using the right words. But anyhow, with that being said, once I do my weighing and the scaling of the homemade gunpowder, at least you friends will know, because what I did is I went back and I made 2 more batches of the juniper and barberry, but I only screened it to 2F. And I'm going to be using my homemade percussion caps. And I've actually charged my percussion caps, my homemade percussion caps, in what we might or may consider to be Magnum. That will be tested when I get ready to do all my shooting. So anyhow, I think that's everything I wanted to discuss regarding the rifle I'm going to be using. And I will probably be just going with my standard 70 grain. So when I do my measuring right now, it will be with 70 grains. So let me get reset up here, and I'll meet you right back here in a moment. Well, I can't rightly say if the camera is picking everything up precisely, but what I have here on the far left is 2F Elephant black powder. Moving to the right, the next powder is my Corned Willow, which is what I would consider 2F. Moving once again to the right, that would be my Barberry, screened what I would consider down to 2F, and then moving further to the right would be the juniper, which is what I would also consider 2F. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the elephant 2F into my powder measurer at 70 grains and put it on the scale and see what that weighs. And I will do the same with the other 3 powders, just so we can kind of have a baseline of what the 70 grains, the difference in the weight between the elephant and the homemade stuff. Now, I do recognize, and I'll acknowledge this right now, that when you have 70 grains of 2F, it does not weigh the same as 70 grains 3F. But I'm just kind of doing this to kind of establish some sort of baseline. And obviously, without a chronometer, nothing can really scientifically be attested to. So let me get reset up here. I've already got my scale leveled out on my table here. Let me get the baseline, the 70 grains of 2F elephant powder, and we'll take it from there. Well, upon getting resituated here, it dawned on me there was no practical reason to bring out my RCBS scale, because I'm not weighing 3F, I'm weighing 2F, so this becomes irrelevant. So what I do have is my flask is already filled with 70 grains of the elephant 2F. What I want to do is put that on my digital scale and see what that weighs. And let's see, grains, yeah, zeroed. What it weighs is actually 76 grains. Okay, so next I'm going to test the corned willow and see what the weight difference is. Stay tuned. Just to remain consistent, what I do is I settle the powder as much as it's going to settle, and then I top it off. So the results should be somewhat close. Not 100% accurate, but somewhat close. Now, once again, this is the corned willow that I screened at 2F. And I would expect it to be quite a bit lighter, and it is. It's 55 grains. Okay, so now let me do the barberry. Well, you folks might have already guessed it. The breeze is starting to pick up once again. So I'll try to speak a little louder. But here again, this is 70 grains barberry. It was settled and topped off. So let's see what we get. If this runs close to my previous test with the 3F, it should be, I'm guessing, relatively close to the 76 grains. But let's see. $65 grains. Okay, so now let's move on to the juniper. Okay, here comes the 70 grains of juniper. Let's see what it weighs. $62 grains. So it is my guess that the barberry and the juniper are right on par with what I had when I was weighing everything with the scale in 3F powder. And the willow seems to still be very, very light. Okay, since the breeze is picking up, I'm going to move to behind the camera and closer to the microphone. And here comes a true confession. The other day I actually sat down and weighed out these powders, and what I did not do was write down what the elephant 2F weighed at 70 grains. But the other day, the barberry, using the same method, weighed in with 70 grains in my measurer. It actually weighed on the digital scale 62 grains. The juniper came in at 60, and the willow came in at 51. Today, just repeating the process, as you saw, I did weigh the elephant, 70 grains, which weighed actually 76 grains. The corned willow came in at 55 grains, which is, close to what I did the other day at 51. And then the barberry today came in at 65 grains, and the other day it came in at 62. So I'm still right on par with the weight. The juniper today came in at 62 grains, and the other day it came in at 60. So weight-wise, the barberry and the juniper are fairly close to the elephant 2F. And I think one of the things that I would like to dispel is that even though a lot of people making homemade black powder say that willow's the best, well, I tend to believe the reason why that statement is being made is because with the willow as your source of charcoal, you're getting more bang for the buck. And as we have previously seen, it's not a clean burning powder. So there's always going to be a trade-off in all of this. So anyhow, I think that's all I have to put forth in this video. In a day or two, when the weather's not so threatening, once again, as you can tell, the breeze is coming up. We're expecting rain today and the forthcoming 2 days, so it may not be another week or so before I can get to actually putting these powders in my Great Plains and testing them at that point. So you have something to look forward to, and I hope that you will give this video a thumbs up, and I hope that you would also share it with your best buddies. Thanks for watching, friends. And oh, by the way, I also want to thank my new subscribers that have found the channel and have subscribed. Just to let everybody know, I try to go through all my comments on Thursday and answer the comments. So if I don't get to your comment right away, I try to do that on Thursdays if I don't have anything else pressing. So once again, friends, thanks for watching, and I certainly hope that we can all glean something useful through these videos. Bye.